After you come out of a relationship where you have been betrayed on such a high level, usually by your ex, how do we learn to trust again? Today, I am welcoming back someone with my one of my favorite accents on top of other things. His name is, here he is Jock Brocas, and we were talking about grief the last time that he was on, talking about how to harness your intuitive intelligence. There he is. Uh-oh. I hope, there you go. Oh. Hey, Jock, I don't see the fan.
You know, I know, I know. And I was just beforehand, I was like, oh my God, the fan's driving me nuts. It's driving me nuts. But this actually looks quite good.
Yeah, yeah. So I was saying, you were on before and we were talking about grief, an
Yeah,
intense conversation that I
yeah.
know has helped many people in our community because I told them to watch it and they did. Um, but today we're going to be tapping into another one of your powers,
Yeah,
and that's about harnessing your intuitive intuition. And I was just
yeah,
mentioning how, especially after betrayal, we've completely stopped trusting ourselves. People often say, I don't know how to keep myself safe. I have a bad picker. I can't,
yeah.
I can't ever like learn to feel safe in the world
Mm.
again. So before you even reintroduce yourself in this new field of expertise, could you talk about what is strategic intuitive intelligence versus just your gut feeling?
Ah, right. Okay. So strategic intuitive intelligence is based on your patterns and your experiences and your training, essentially, as well. I mean, life is a training, essentially. So when we think about intuition, we tend to think about we kind of go inside of ourselves. We have this clairvoyant vision. We have a feeling, but that's not always right because you don't discern it right, and you get your mind in the way, and your brain gets in the way, and you don't know how to filter it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think about we think about the intuitive side as something that is it's within us, and that's true. But you can make a lot of misjudgments because you don't use your experience, you don't use the patterns, the recognition, you don't know how to discern whether that signal is between signal and noise. And someone will
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh, I had a gut feeling, and I didn't do this, but or it didn't happen, or it didn't work, or my gut feeling." Is because you get in the way. It's because you let your materialism or your belief, which beliefs change constantly, right? As
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned before, beliefs are always changing. And so you don't get to a point of knowing because you don't understand what intuition is. And intuition goes way beyond just sitting quiet and just having a little gut feeling or a little image in your mind or a word in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't know how to understand the signal and the noise, then it can guide you the wrong way. And so intuitive intelligence is blending your natural born given intuitive power that you have, your intuition, your feeling, and your experiences and your training and your knowledge and bringing it all together and then being able to discern what is right and what is not to make the right decision.
That sounds like really complicated. So before you even get into it, tell us who you are because I know you wear many hats, but for the purposes of this interview, I mean, you can talk about all your stuff, but why are you an expert in this area?
Okay, so well, obviously I'm the founder of Help Lawyer, and that was a passion of mine for many, many years, which is grown way beyond what it was. And I have been a professional medium for over 25 years, but I've utilized intuition and intuitive intelligence in real life scenarios and high stakes environments.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a military career. I came out, I worked in high risk security. I was involved in executive protection. I did a lot of stuff back in the day when I was a lot younger than I am. And I did undercover work as well. And so I had to be able to utilize not only skills and training that I had developed over time, but also my experiences and my ability to utilize my intuition. When I understood pattern recognition, I understood, the powers of my intuition. I was able to utilize that to help guide me in the right way, make the right decisions, actually keep me alive in times where I could have lost my life. And so my work goes way beyond grief and doing. I'm heavily involved in academic research, not only in intuition, but obviously, as you know, in grief.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently finishing a master's degree, moving on to a PhD in October in psychology. So I try to bring the spiritual in with the scientific and in with real life examples. I wrote Powers of the Sixth Sense just after 9/11 many years ago, which was a very basic. It wasn't the book I wanted to write actually, because the publisher was like, your first one was going to be Safety Through Intuition, and it was too big. I had written over 100,000 words, and it was like, cut it down, cut it down. We just need something quick to put out there. So it wasn't the first book I wrote, but in that book, I talked about strategic intuition and utilizing intuition. And I think over the years, that's grown, that's changed, that's developed along with my scientific research. And so now I work in that field with lawyers. I help them to discern and understand case structure, and from an intuitive side as well, how to cope with clients, not only in grief, but how to utilize their inbuilt intuition, and also with scientists and other people that I work with. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Yeah, which I'm like, okay, so as I describe him, I'm gonna have like a whole list of things that like, oh yeah, I gotta put that in here. Oh yeah, author.
Lisa, someone once says to me, "You're a bit of a polymath." And I didn't know what that meant at the time, so I had to go and look it up, because I thought it was like some kind of sexual connotation, that they were having a go at me for something. I'm like, indeed I am not. I will tell you. But once I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, that pretty much does fit my that fits my psychology. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so hard to focus because there's so many things. But back to the security and
Mm,
the military background and
mm,
executive protection. So and now you work with lawyers and case studies, but let's bring it to this audience of people who are worried about their own personal safety,
mm.
especially, well, I should say physically as well as emotionally, because a lot of our
Absolutely.
people have come out of these very dangerous relationships. And
Mm.
even when they are physically far away, there's still this sense that they're going to come after me. I don't want them to know my address or my phone number. How does the strategic intuitive intelligence help protect our safety physically as well as possibly emotionally? I know this is a huge question.
It is, but it's something that's really important, because people in that situation, they're 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 in a bit of predicament, right? Because what is the worst thing that can not destroy your intuition, but totally give you the wrong signal? And that's fear.
Mm-hmm.
And people in that situation are coming from a place of fear. And we've heard all the mnemonics before, fear, false evidence appearing real, and all that kind of stuff. And that's all very well and good to try and understand it from that point. But fear is something that's a very real emotion that we feel. And when we don't understand fear, we see it from a point of, it disrupts us, and yet it can be our greatest teacher. Fear can
Mm-hmm.
actually serve us. But what happens in a scenario where you're dealing with people who are coming out of bad situations, in divorce cases, they've maybe been abused physically, mentally, fine, all sorts of ways. There's an underlying there's a fear there, and that's what can disrupt the signal. And so they tend to then, they're coming from a place of fear, so they don't make the right judgment. And so they stay in that abuse longer than what they could have, right? In Powers of the Sixth Sense, I talk about the cycle of abuse. And people who are in a relationship, or people who are in a situation that they feel they can't get out of, that's their fear keeping them
Mm-hmm.
prisoner, right? And even though they're using their intuition, and they feel something's going to happen, they can't find a way out because they're constantly driven from that fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They don't
even once
feel an
they're out,
escape.
we see fear. I think of it as dread, this sense that something terrible is going to happen. If I don't
And
do what somebody else wants, or if I don't perform perfectly, then a judge is going to find out and take my kids away. It's a constant sense of overwhelming dread.
and yet, if they manage to find balance and they manage to understand the signal and the noise and the discernment, there may be another avenue that takes them down that makes it easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
That gets them out of the abusive situation, that helps them to deal with that that lawyer who's maybe difficult, or they're frightened to take action because of maybe a repercussion or because of what they feel might be an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
often what they fear as an outcome is not reality.
right.
That's an illusion from their fear.
Yep. See it all the time.
So they can't see the way out because they can't discern it because they're coming from an emotional point, fear. And we need to get to the point where we're able to utilize intuition in a split second, but discern it very fast in high stress situations.
Mm-hmm.
So, like an example, one time, many years ago, I was teaching an intuition workshop for an oil company, and teaching their staff as they were traveling abroad or as they were going local how to work with intuition in a high stress environment. So I would take them through a lot of different exercises, a lot of over a period of time, and then it culminated in an exercise where I had people that had meditated, that had gone into a mindset of an attacker, put in and made them go to a dark place in the night, and made them feel the difference between that threatened energy, that point. So where they would walk through that dark path or that dark park, and then they would be able to identify the minute they felt something negative, and I would then mark them on whether they actually had identified where a potential attacker was. And there's many
So,
massive park.
well, let me just
So
clarify. You had them get
yeah,
in the head of like if they were the attacker rather than the
yeah,
victim.
yeah. Right, which is not, it's not easy to do, but they've got, these are people that I mean, I've trained in martial arts and all sorts as well. So um, you have to, and it's difficult because you're kind of making up a high stress environment. It's like if you go to the range or you're training in close protection or you're training in high stress shooting scenarios. People, soldiers, they train constantly,
Mm-hmm.
and they put them through made up scenarios. Like we have in Britain, and we had a big problem in Northern Ireland, and you would go through, there's ranges in Hythe and Kent that would put you through high stress scenarios, and it would be built up areas just like Northern Ireland, and they would make up the story and put you in that stressful situation. So
Mm-hmm.
that is going beyond it, but take that idea and then translate that idea into maybe the corporate world or into training them to put them in a high stakes, high stakes situation, just so they can just get a feeling, even if they get a little bit of a feeling, even if they get a little bit of a nudge that they picked up something, they're learning then to discern between what is negative, what is positive, and how they feel. And also remember that intuition and a feeling is not just in the mind, it's in the
Mm-hmm.
body. How do we
Yeah.
feel it in the body? Somatically, we've got to feel it. What happens between the mind and the body is connected, right? So that exercise just helped them to identify how their feelings arise in the
Mm-hmm.
body, in the mind, in many different ways. And that gave them an edge. Now, interestingly, after that, there was an attack in that park and a young woman did get attacked. Not that was in my course or anything else, but it was in the news, and somebody did walk through that park at night and they did get attacked. So imagine someone who's in a scenario like yours, in a bad relationship, or dealing with a lawyer, or in these high stress situations, if they can get to just identify that little change, that to understand how to discern between the signal and the noise, it could be the difference between keeping them alive or getting a more positive outcome and getting them out of the situation that they're in.
You know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about preparing people for situations that they are uncomfortable with, like the
Yeah.
parallels between what you're describing and what we do. And I think we deal with people who often say, "I'm afraid that this is going to happen. I'm really scared of court. I'm afraid that my ex's attorney is going to attack me in court." And so we say, instead of being afraid, let's just say it's going to happen. We know it. We
Yeah.
know they're going to bully you. That's part of how this goes. They're going to bully you. They're going to expose things about your private life. They're going to try to paint you as an unfit parent. So let's plan for that and figure out how to respond appropriately rather than just being worried if it's going to happen. And I feel like once people are like, all right, like I can't get out of it, it changes that worry into like, now we can come up with a plan, because, you know, we can't make it stop. So
And
what do we do?
so what I would do is it depends how you, well, let me ask you this. Describe to me how you would come up with that plan.
So we have a bunch of stuff on how to be a good witness, but we also explain what that part of what that lawyer's job is, who's a bully, and everybody thinks, oh, they
Mm.
hate me personally. We say that's
Yeah.
their job, is to advocate for your ex. They are here,
Mm.
they have been hired by your ex to do the best job they can. And one of the things that we see all the time is bullying. And
Mm.
the judge isn't going to make it stop. You can't make it stop, but the
Mm.
lawyer doesn't care about you. They don't care.
Right.
This is nothing personal. This is what they're doing on purpose. They're going to try to make you cry, and they're going to try to
Yeah.
make you lose your temper. So just let's start thinking how they're going to attack you. Like, what's your
Mm.
vulnerability that you're like, I don't want this to come out. Let's plan
Great.
for when it comes out and what you can say. So for example, I don't know, somebody had a drug problem
Mm.
and the lawyer starts attacking them on the stand. There's different things you
Mm.
can do with it, but how do we keep you calm in that situation? So for
Mm.
example, they attack your drug use in the past, which is very, a lot of shame people feel about that. How can we know that that's probably a distraction from what the real issue is? How can we focus on you staying calm and saying something like, I'm not surprised that you're bringing this up. This is something that keeps coming up.
Mm.
But here's what I've done about this in the past
Mm.
few years. I've joined AA. I have a sponsor. Blah, 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 blah. But for you
Mm.
to be as calm as possible and not let that rile you up, but to plan for it rather than just think, I hope they don't bring up my drug use and oh my gosh, they're going to take my kids away.
Mm.
All that fear of like what's going to happen. And
So
also
first,
getting them ready and saying, you actually have an opportunity. And this is from
yeah,
interviewing lawyers. You can look better than a normal person if you focus on what you've done to improve yourself.
yeah,
So that
right.
makes them like, really? Ways to calm down that fear and make them feel like they do have agency over in their response to the bullying, rather than just, oh no, I'm going to be stuck up there and I'm going to be attacked and there's nothing I can do about it.
I think so. Here's the thing I would do with them is I'd actually put them under pressure, right? I would actually put them through a role-playing scenario,
We do,
put
we
them
do
under
that too.
pressure, right? So much. But also what I'd be teaching them is that, and this is what I say to a lot of my students as well, there's a power in silence,
Mm-hmm.
and never respond instantly. The problem is that we respond instantly because that is what's expected. And so we don't allow our intuition to take over. We don't allow our feeling to settle in. One of the things that I would do is tell them 3 to 5 seconds, don't respond, just look at them.
Yeah.
Just look at them. And as you're looking at them, you're entering that silence and you're giving time for your spirit, for your intuition to open up and to bring you in. And that's the other thing is that you train them clairvoyantly, get them to imagine and visualize that scenario all the time, but then training them how to utilize their clairvoyance to rewrite the story So how would they rewrite that story? So putting them in that scenario and then putting them in, the hero's journey. They're the hero, right? And so how they would react, and so they think like this. They get to the point where they're visualizing it, but they're also visualizing how they're going to respond with the silence, because in the silence is where the power is,
Right. The pause.
right?
And
Absolutely,
also
and even
looking, like you said.
looking at them straight away and keeping silent, but allowing time for their intuitive powers to rise up inside of them, for them to be able to feel what they're right, because they'll feel it. You've got to get used to feeling it in your body and your mind, and to be able to not respond in such a way, and to realize, you know, behind me you can see I was very lucky. I don't, you probably can't see it, but I was very lucky to be in the residential security team for Her Majesty the Queen Mother when she went to St. Port's area. A very short time, but that's what gave me the real interest in protection and close protection and things. And I remember being terrified because this dignitary was coming, and there was so many members of the staff and the household and that we had to get ready for. And I remember then looking at her, meeting her, I was shaking her hand, I got chatting to her, and she went out in the garden one day and she was just, there. She's passed over now, obviously. But I realized how normal she actually was, and that we tend to then put everybody on a pedestal, whether it's King of England, whether it's a president, whether it's. Got to remember that they have the same functions in body as we have.
Mm-hmm.
All blood runs red. They're no different to us. They're more connected to us than anything. And once we realize that the person's not in a position of power, that they're just like us,
Mm-hmm.
that also gives you that leeway. That also gives you that space to not be so frightened that that lawyer that's standing in front of you shouting at you or trying to put you under pressure, they're going to go home tonight and they can just have an argument with their wife just as much as anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
They could, they might not like pizza. They might have a bad day. They are no different to you. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have any power over you. This is a game.
Yes. Yes. We talked about
Life
that.
is a game. And so once we harness our own internal power and what we have, we can change the direction of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. So are there ways to, let's say, outside of the courtroom, when someone's amygdala has been really uh, worn down and everything feels like a threat and it's just firing up about everything? And I remember being in that place myself where I used to be able to trust my gut,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't, because any little thing was like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, what if it's this, what if it's that, how can someone start to actually, coming from a place like that, to start settling down and identifying what actual red flags are in a situation, whether it's from a person or being in a location?
The red flag, I mean, how does it make them feel, essentially? But also, everybody asks us, what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? And you've got to take time to, this is the problem, is most people won't take time to go within themselves. They're too frightened to find out who they are, because they're living on what people perceive me to be or what the expectations are. And so how do you identify a red flag? Well, you're going to identify a red flag when you understand how your mind reacts to that feeling and how your body reacts to that feeling. If your
Mm-hmm.
body doesn't react, but your mind reacts, that's a sign that maybe it's not connected. So maybe my ego's getting in the way, and
Mm.
maybe that's not going to be the right way. But what happens if my I feel it in my body and I feel it in my mind, and then something else change? Then that's a good sign that it's all connected, and that's perhaps a right red flag, right?
So
Because we
brain
tend
and body, not just
brain
brain.
and brain and body. Well, I don't like to use the word brain. I'd say mind and body,
Mind.
right?
Okay.
Because for me, the brain is allowed, it is an expression of the mind. And so it filters both in and out. It filters what comes in and it filters what goes out, and vice versa. So it
Mm-hmm.
only exists because the mind allows it to exist. Because you know, it's a psychological, our mind is a psychological building block to our reality. From nothing, we became something.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't become something just like that. We from nothing at all, we became substance. Right? When you think about that, that's so powerful because the same animating force that animates a plant to grow, a seed to sprout, is the animating force that actually allows us to live. And from nothingness, we became something. So the brain became something from nothing. It's an expression of divine energy. It's an expression, right? So I like to say the mind and body. If we're only looking at the fear in the mind and the body's not reacting, chances are that might not be right. That's coming from your fear and your ego. And it might be that you're playing that scenario because of your fear. It's only ever going to come when everything is interconnected. When you feel it, everything is interconnected. So I'll give you an example. I was asked in a case recently for a lawyer to look at a particular legal case that involved abuse. And you have to understand that that responsibility is huge
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, I can't go up in the court of law and because there's no really evidence for it, but I can corroborate intelligence. I can corroborate the information blindly just by feeling and knowing and watching, identifying, using my intuition and corroborate that's right or that's wrong. But I wouldn't do that just in my mind. I have to feel it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when we feel something, we're feeling it from the mind, we're feeling it from the body. So people have got to connect their mind and body together. That's when you start to understand and discern signal to noise. Your noise might be your ego. Your noise might be your fear. So it's just in your mind. What if this happens, and you create this story,
Mm.
and then that's a red flag, but it might not be a red flag because it's not affecting your body. It's not affecting everything, every way that you feel. And so your red flag, I would say, you'll identify the red flag when it comes from your mind and your body, and you feel it in both.
Okay, so now I'm thinking of a situation that we see constantly is getting communication from your ex and you feel it in your body. There's this fear of what
Mm-hmm.
it's going to say. When
Well, see,
so it's in the body, but I mean, I
yeah,
don't know if it's in the mind too, but it's just this like in the throat or in the stomach usually of like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no.
and
But there's no
that's where
actual danger. There's no danger.
and that comes from your constant pattern. That's the pattern that you've put yourself in because you're living in a fear. And so
Mm-hmm.
fear also comes in our body. But then that's at the time where you take time and you sit back and you go, okay, wait a minute, let me go silent and then let me analyze it. Let me look at this. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
how do I? And then you start to utilize your mind. Then you start to go into. You might take 5 minutes to go into a meditative state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because our fear makes our body react,
Yeah.
right? Fear makes in any situation, fear makes our body react. But when we start to slow down and breathe, like special forces operators, they get taught box breathing, and that's everybody knows about. So 4 4 4 4 4 because it reduces anxiety, and you breathe. You're taking a shot, you steady up. You're learning to utilize your breath. But you've got to connect your mind as well. Your mind has got to be able to discern between that. So if you feel something in your body, that also can be a sign to step back and just take time, go quiet. Why did I feel that? Start asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Start to go into your mind and start to connect it. And then you realize, oh, it's not so bad. There's nothing that really it can happen. You get a bad letter, you get bad information, you go, that's just a fear response.
Yeah.
That's all it is. But then go silent. Because remember, the power is in the silence. Your
Mm.
intuition exists in the silence. If you don't go silent, you just have noise. If you go silent, that's when the power comes, and that's when you can join the dots. That's when everything starts to make sense. and the pattern starts to show. And then you can identify, is that pattern correct? Is that a red flag or is it not? Is it coming from my ego? Is my intuition warning me something?
So it really, it almost sounds too simple. Pause.
It is. It is.
Pause
It's
and
like
be quiet.
meditation.
Yeah.
It's like meditation. It's simple in its difficulty and it's difficult in its simplicity.
Yeah. Yeah.
We make it harder than what it is. But we also got to realize that our experiences make us who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We have to learn from those experiences, right? And it is simple. Life is simple. We make it difficult
Mm-hmm.
because of our emotions, because we don't realize the powerful beings that we are. If we only, and here's the thing, it's easy for you and I to say, go quiet, go silent, go into that silence because that's where your power is. How difficult is it to get into silence? Wow, it's really
No,
difficult,
I mean, it's like we wouldn't have
right?
clients if they could do that.
Right? Exactly. So you have to train yourself to get into silence as well. You have to. I mean, there's the old cliche: go into meditation. There's all these tools that we can utilize, right? But some people don't know how to meditate because they have an expectation based on what everybody else thinks, and they don't realize that their mind is going to be busy. They're going to be interrupted every 5 minutes, and they don't have to get to the point of nothingness, because if they got to the point of nothingness, they wouldn't really exist because they would be so highly evolved. They'd
Mm-hmm.
be beings of light, right? Well, that's not where we're having an experience here. And so our experiences dictate. And so we have to learn from our experiences and learn that it takes training to go into silence. We have to keep at it and understand. And that can be simple, how you live your life each day or how you take time. Look, people who are going through a stressful situation, they may want to learn to meditate in a different way. Make it simple. They may want to just get out into nature. They may want to journal, right? They could, and here's the other thing that they could do. How maybe will they identify red flags? Well, get in front of a camera and journal to yourself. Okay, put a camera on, record it. It don't need to be for anybody, but go through the scenario as you're talking to yourself, because
Right.
then you'll start to connect. You
I
start to say,
remember
oh,
we
wait a
talked
minute,
about
that's
this.
yeah,
Yeah. We,
exactly.
we called
So
it we
even
called it
that
visual journaling. So it's almost like
visual
you're
journaling.
talking to yourself
Mhm,
for a little while. You're getting it out, like that fear,
mhm.
and then you can look at it later and you can
Yeah,
analyze your
yeah,
patterns.
absolutely. So you start to learn from your patterns, right? You can journal it if you get something in. Anybody who gets any bad information from a lawyer that's saying, like you had, right? Lawyer said, oh, by the way, oh, this is going to go bad. This is going to be worse than everything else. But look what's happened. Look how things have changed for you. Maybe it would have changed faster for you if instead of that panic, then you utilized all your intuitive skills, went quiet, then maybe didn't have that first scenario, but you had to go through it because this is what you're doing now. You're helping so many other people through it. But think about it. When you go back to your own story and your own narrative, where in your past could you have gone into the silence and it maybe mean less stress,
Hmm.
less upset, less change?
I could have, because I'm a fast mover, talker.
Yeah.
Like I don't pause. I don't take my own advice. I don't take your advice, and I need to do it more. It's like I need someone to tell me to do it.
And here's the other thing. Anybody who's listening out there, look, if you don't know how to meditate, just sit with a cup of coffee, sit with a cup of tea, just be quiet on with your food.
Mm,
Start to think about, all right, how am I going to learn to go into silence? Well, instead of wolfing down your dinner, we talk about mindful practices. Let it be mindful about our eating.
hmm.
What I try to teach some of my students is try and visualize where that food came from. Try and build the story. Who planted it? Did they have a family? Just go right into that story as you're giving thanks and you're showing gratitude. Gratitude is not about going, I'm thankful for the day, I'm thankful for the Lord, I'm thankful for whatever I get. That's just words saying glibly.
Hmm.
Thankfulness is when you go really deep into the story of gratitude. When you start to go into that story and you start to see that narrative and you start to visualize that. One, you're training your clairvoyance. You're training your mind to see in images and to discern between them. Two, you're building up the story. You're actually training all aspects of you. And you're also taking some time to train yourself to go into silence and to be mindful in that practice of eating that dinner or having that coffee. And that, even that small thing, is almost a meditative state. Some people that are listening now, when you're having a shower, instead of worrying about how much soap you've got or everything else, just stand into that shower and just imagine it's a waterfall and just imagine you're getting cleansed by it. And that's training your mind to raise your vibration. It's training your mind, it's reducing your anxiety. And also, here's another thing to try. Anybody out there? It is when you, if you breathe in and you just hold your breath for, a few seconds, 3 to 5 seconds, 8 seconds, without thinking, nothing in your mind can actually, there's nothing can disrupt that moment. That's when you really feel the silence. When you can, because when we talking, things go in your mind all the time. But if I go and I hold that breath, nothing can interfere. In that moment, that's what I want people to. If you could just get that 1 second of that feeling, you're on your way. You're on your way to developing your intuition even more. When you can feel just that tiniest silence in between the breath and the out breath, then you're getting there.
Perfect. Perfect. I was going to say more, but I want to end it right there because it's just perfect. Jock, how can people find you?
You can get me on one of my sites, 21v.org, 21 virtues, 21v.org, or jockbrocas.com, and you can connect with me in any of those two sites.
Yes, and I know we are going to be doing this, talking again.
Absolutely. I loved it. Thank you. I can't believe I haven't coughed, blown my nose, or God knows what else.
I know you did it. You did it live. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
absolutely.
All
It's
right.
been a pleasure. God bless.
Always. All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.